Hey, and welcome to Matt and Jess TV. I am Matt
And
Roast.
I'm Jessica Bun Bun.
This is our reaction and review for Monster, the Ed Gein Story. All 8 episodes of this drop today on Netflix,
hmm
and that means that Jess and I have spent the entirety of this day watching the show.
I've been up since 4:30 in the morning watching this show. And I mean, it was good. There was a lot of stuff that I really liked about it, some stuff that I was kind of like, it's okay. But overall, I mean, the performances from Laurie Metcalf
Yeah.
and from Charlie Hunnam, oh my God, like outstanding.
I'm really coming into this review of two different minds here, where I think when this show is settling in on giving you a depiction of what Ed Gein's life was, some of the things that he did, when it was its darkest and most gruesome, I think is when it was most effective. And like
Yep.
those episodes in particular, I would say the first 5 of this show are outstanding. Really, really well acted. I mean, I would even throw in here
Incredible.
Susanna Son, who played Adeline. She was
Yeah.
the only good part of The Idol, a show that I have made fun of on this channel for well over a year at this point. But in the midst of all the good, there are some decisions that I'm sitting back and I'm just wondering, why did you guys decide to do that?
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of information out there about this case. So it was quite surprising how many liberties were taken with this and how much information that was in this that was just like, none of this happened. That whole last episode, almost all of it was just like, none of this happened except for how he died and that his gravestone over the years, like people were like picking little bits of it off to take as souvenirs, and then it was eventually stolen and now it's just an unmarked grave. But the rest of that episode, I was just like, this stuff isn't happening. Killers aren't writing him. They're not all like, you're the godfather of all serial killers, which we actually all know is H.H. Holmes. He was actually like the first American serial killer. It wasn't Ed Gein, who's also not a serial killer. I mean, if you're going by what he was charged with and what he admitted to, two does not make you a serial killer.
I'll admit that I'm coming into this show with a little bit less information about Ed Gein than Jess is, where I knew some things about him going into this, but I would say about 50% of my knowledge base was based on knowing Jess and some of the things that she has told me over the years. So I at times was willing to accept some liberties, but then when this show did get to the point where things that even I knew were not true, there is a struggle here. And I think this is a question you can ask throughout all of these monster seasons is
Mhm.
how much fiction are we allowing ourselves to accept on a show that's fundamentally based on true events? Like, are we
Yes.
willing to accept some things that we know are categorically false?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen all three seasons, and I mean, season one felt like it was a little more true to the story. The same with season two. And while there was a lot of good stuff in this, I'm not going to be here and be like, this was terrible, because it wasn't. But there was a lot of stuff in here that just wasn't true or was being told through the lens of Ed. And Ed is an unreliable narrator. I mean,
Yeah.
he was suffering from a lot of mental illness when he was doing what he was doing, all the way throughout his whole life until finally he was diagnosed and was medicated for it. But it was like, how much is real and how much isn't? And Ryan was probably trying to give a little bit of that feeling with it for us to really be inside his mind.
All right. Well, we have so much to talk about in this review, the good, the bad, and certainly the ugly. But before we dive into it, be sure to hit that subscribe button because, in addition to covering Monster here, and with this being very much spooky season, we
Mhm.
are very excited to cover It Welcome to Derry.
Mhm.
Premiering later this month, it will be on HBO. There is a lot of good content there that will probably carry us through much of the rest of this year.
Oh, for sure. And also, if you're just looking for more gruesome, we're also covering Gen V here at the channel, and that show is also pretty gruesome. But definitely hit that subscribe button and stick with us.
Yeah, and we really, really appreciate that. Now, first and foremost, since you brought up the performances here, let's just talk about Charlie Hunnam because I've seen him on a few things. It's not
Mhm.
just Sons of Anarchy. He's obviously iconic as Jax, but even
Yes.
with that, I did not know he was capable of some of the stuff that he pulls off as Ed Gein on these episodes.
Like, incredible. I only really know him for Sons of Anarchy, and while, it was fun watching that show and watching him there, I did not expect this type of performance from him. I didn't know what he was capable of when it was like, "Oh, he's gonna be playing Ed Gein." I'm like, "Ooh, that's a really tough character to be playing."
Yeah,
And also I'm like, "Isn't he just a little too attractive to be playing Ed Gein?" And then I saw the makeup that they did on him, plus his performance, the way he was holding his body, like 10 out of 10. I totally like, I'm eating crow on that. He was the perfect cast for this.
just from everything I've seen, he really did a lot of work in between,
Hmm.
getting his body ready,
Yeah.
preparing his voice, very different from the way he talks in real life.
Yeah.
And he sunk himself into this. And that's not an easy thing to do because I think the whole goal of this and also all the monster seasons in general
Right.
is we're trying to tell these stories about these despicable people, but at the same time, you want to try to find humanity may not be the perfect word, but humanity in the sense of you need to understand why they became the way that they did. And there
Hmm.
was just enough of that with Charlie where you could have sat back and been like, okay, had Ed Gein had a different upbringing, a different parent, he still obviously had mental illness, but are there
Right.
ways that things could have turned around for him even just a little bit?
Yeah, or even if he was born in another era where if he was born, later on, could he have been able to get help for this? That this would have been diagnosed if he had a different upbringing, different mom, and there were more resources available. Could he have just gotten help for this and none of this would have happened?
Yeah, they effectively drove that point home. Like they're being
Yes.
forced to answer all of these different questions, which is hard because we don't really have the answers for them.
Yeah, and I think it really makes the audience dive deep into that sort of introspective thinking on it of, if he was at a different time, different parents, this is a mental health issue. Are we looking at him now in a different way from the things that he did? And for me, the answer is still no. The things that he did are horrible
Yeah,
and there's no excuse for them. There are reasons for them,
yeah.
and what happened. His mother failed him, the healthcare system failed him. But these things, they're not excusable. What he did is not okay.
No, it's really, really not. And since you brought up his mother, and she has a much bigger role, I think, in the first half of this season than the
Yes.
second. But Lori Metcalf, I mean, wow.
Outstanding. She's so incredible. And it's so nice to see her get such a good, meaty role like this because, we all know her from Roseanne. She was on this sitcom for so long. She's always going to be that role. So it's very hard to break out of something like that. And some people don't. I mean, we even saw this here with Anthony Perkins in Psycho, where he's just like, oh, cool. I'm Norman Bates forever. Excellent.
Yeah, I love this role for Laurie Metcalf. It is so dark and it's so weird in a way because I
Mhm.
also know her for being Sheldon Cooper's mom on The Big
Yeah.
Bang Theory, and it's just like something that was so like bizarrely weird and wholesome on that becomes so corrupt here, and she's doing kind of similar movements in a way and playing a mother figure, just very, very different sorts of mother figures.
Okay, I want to talk to Ryan for just a
All
second
right,
here.
all right,
Ryan Murphy, put on your hard
all
hat.
right, all
Listen,
right.
I know that he got a lot of flack for the first season of Dahmer, which I really liked. It is still my favorite season out of all of these. Charlie's performance is my favorite out of all of them, but I
Yeah.
think that the first season was more overall rounded. But he got a lot of flack for it, for, glamorizing it and not doing enough focus on the victims. And I actually had felt more of the opposite. I felt that he did more focus on the victims in that than he did here. We had two confirmed victims. Ed has denied everything else, but we didn't really get that much about them and their lives and what they kind of had gone through a little before and a little more during. We had 8 episodes, and there was a lot of episodes that were like focused on things that didn't feel like they were really focused on Ed, and I think could have been more focused on that. And I found that there was a lot of Ryan finger wagging at all of us, kind of like, okay, yeah, I sensationalized this first one. Well, now you guys are all watching this one, and this is all about that same feeling. And we had like, Ed Gein even looking at the camera and breaking the fourth wall and being like, you're the one that can't look away. And it's like said again in the fourth episode. You've got the hunters coming in and him being like, you shouldn't be in here watching this. So, like, there was like a lot of that was going on and on and on with it, where I just felt like I was getting beat over the head by it with Ryan, where he's basically like, yeah, this stuff is sensationalized, but you're part of the problem. You, the audience, you guys are the problem because you're watching this thing that I'm making you. So blame yourself. And I was just kind of like, great. I feel really good about watching this. He did it too much.
Okay. Well, this is where I'm going to pose a big question here. And, Ryan, Ian Brennan, Max Winkler, the whole team here. This is for all of you.
Team.
I'm sure you're all watching this review.
Yeah.
What was the point of this? And I don't mean that to be cynical. I mean, this is the question. Were you guys trying to tell a based on a true story recounting of Ed Gein's life? Or was this a morality play? Or was this a story about how Ed Gein impacted other industries and the future of how we consume this content? Because I feel like it never really made up its mind. To me, this was most effective when it was choice number one, where we're just sort of getting a real down on the ground look at who was Ed Gein, what did he do, how terrible were some of the things that he did, because honestly, it's not like I wanted to watch it, but that stuff was really compelling and dark and just really messed up. And I feel like they not glossed over it, but they really sped over a lot of the things that happened, especially when it came to the people who were already buried.
There was no trial. The people who he was robbing their graves, there was not very much information or what was going on with this or any after effect of any of this. It really did just feel like there was a lot of speeding through Ed and the murders that he did commit and the grave robbing crimes that he committed, all these other things, to get to some of this other stuff where it's like, oh, this is his effect on everything in the future with, making movies like Psycho and Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Silence of the Lambs. And this was his effect on cinema. And then because of Psycho, this was now a complete effect on cinema and what we all consume, that now we want more horror and more true crime and more. And it's just like, okay, but this fascination was already around back then. It wasn't only that he did this and then Psycho came out. I mean, Psycho, it is an iconic movie, but it is such a teeny tiny piece of what Ed Gein was about.
Yeah, it almost felt like all of the Hollywood sensationalism. And Ryan, I understand you love this stuff. I feel like if Ryan Murphy could make 1,000 shows about Hollywood within a year, he would do it. Like, I get that this is a passion project of his, but all of that could have been an email. It could have been a 2-line sentence at the end of this show. Like, I honestly feel like, and this is Netflix, there shouldn't be any restrictions. It almost felt like the producers were almost so scared of their own content matter that they really didn't want to stick with the more gruesome aspects of this too long because they were afraid that the audience would only be able to stomach it for a certain amount of time.
If you're going to focus on Ed Gein, then you just need to go all in on it. You can't do these half measures, no half measures.
No.
It can't be half of this show is about Ed Gein and the other half of this show is about how Ed Gein affected other people, but also how he didn't affect other people, but you're going to make it up. That all these other serial killers are like, oh, it's Ed. Ed's the reason I'm doing this, that, whatever. Richard Speck is sending these letters that never happened. Like, it's just really weird. Like, what is the show? And I think you said it right, that it's like kind of the first part of the show with taking out some of the movie stuff and all this other stuff when it's really focused in on Ed,
Yeah.
his mom, the death of his mom, how that affected him, as he talked about in the show, the loneliness consuming him, and that maybe if he hadn't done that, he might have been able to kind of reach out and get help. I mean, it still was a different time, and I still don't think he would have been able to get that help, but that's the meat of the show. That is the show for me. Once we're getting into like, oh, and now we're making, Texas Chainsaw Massacre and this and that, whatever. I was just like, this isn't what the show is for me.
No, this is really about,
It's too broken up.
yeah, what is this person doing? How is this person impacting the community? And I know that there are certain liberties that are going to be taken with
Of
every true
course.
story. Like the character of Adeline, like she existed in real life through what limited knowledge that I have, but
Yep.
not exactly in the same form that she does through a lot of this story. But I was willing to accept a little bit more of that than some of the movie stuff just because as an audience, I think they wanted to give us an access point because otherwise Ed Gein's not really talking to anyone for the first half of this season. So I understood that part of it, and I like the idea of having someone we could use to pick apart his brain to sort of showcase these horrible things that he is doing. But all of that then gets washed away when you're combining this one thing that's not entirely true with all of these other things that are not entirely true.
Okay, let's talk about Adeline because at first, I was like, okay, this is really interesting,
Mhm.
that maybe he did have this girlfriend. Maybe it did get to this point where maybe they were going to get married. And I keep saying maybe because, it is sort of little bits of pieces. This is all from like Ed's point of view, and he is unreliable as a narrator, and there
Yeah.
isn't enough information about her out there. But watching it as a viewer, I was having a really hard time believing that it was going to the place that it was going, and she just wasn't walking away from it in any kind of way because by the time we got to the end of all of this where he's having this conversation with her, a younger version of her, where she's kind of like, I'm just like you, it's kind of like I would have liked to have just seen that that's actually the case, that she was actually just like him, because the way that it was kind of threading together, where at first she's like at the house and she's getting scared and she leaves and she's like, I don't know, man, like it's one thing to have gruesome photos of horrible things happening to people, and it is another thing then to be like in a house with a dead body, with
Yeah.
she's going into the barn, he's pulled somebody apart, and she's just like, let me whip out my camera, and what, we'll get through it. Oh, here's a chair and it's got a nipple on it. I'm just like, okay, you know what, like somewhere along the line here, I feel like she would have just been, I'm out.
Yeah, and here's the thing. This could have been fixed with just a little bit more backstory, a little bit more
Yes.
time, and they maybe gave 4 or 5 minutes of solo Adeline backstory
Right.
through the entirety of this. But if we had gotten 10 or 15 where we're either given a more clear directive that, okay, is she really here this entire time? Are we getting a Fight Club sort of thing going on with Ed Gein? Or if she is here the entire time, what drove her to this, like you said. I think
Yeah.
just giving us a little bit more clarity for a show that's meant to give us at least plausible believability is pretty important.
Yeah, and for a like Ed Gein, the things that he's done, they're so unbelievable. Like they are stories that are just about a boogeyman.
Yeah.
Like they're so unbelievable. So to already have the story of Ed Gein that is so unbelievable, to then add in a bunch of stuff that's just not true, and then add in Adeline, who is a real person, but make her story kind of just feel disjointed and not really true, it started to get really muddled because I was just like, okay, they're both interested in sort of the gruesome and the horror, whatever. It's in fact seems to be affecting Ed in a different way than her. Okay, that's fine. But if it was affecting her in the same way, then I would kind of get why she didn't leave. You're gonna who out there is gonna look at that chair with that nipple on it and be like, oh, okay, this is fine. No problem. I'm just going to keep on going into the room. Even her at that point, it's one thing to see a picture, it's another thing to see it in front of you. You'd be not there. And I think because they didn't really make it clear, they kind of made her out to be like, oh, I'm a rebel. I'm going against the grain and what's okay and what's not okay. But to make that jump then to, hey, so I know that this woman just died. I'm out of town for a while. Why don't you dig her up and have your way with her and I'll catch you when I'm back? I was like, man, this is a leap.
It's a big leap. I mean, we're talking leap across the Grand Canyon here. I will do a little bit of real talk here because I didn't know that much about Adeline going into this. So when we got to this scene pretty early on, when she's at the house and she's trying to talk to Mother and Mother isn't answering and
Right.
she gets freaked out and leaves, I was just like in the moment, okay, we're never going to see her again. I was, because if it was me, I would never go back. I would never interact. If something felt that off, but yeah, when she did come back, I was thinking to myself, okay, something is up with her. And what little we got about it was like, okay, I understand that something is off with her. But what is off with her? To what extent is it off? And then
Yeah.
how far is she willing to go? Like, these are the things that are then left unanswered.
Yeah.
But the first half, these inconsistencies aside, it did a really good job of establishing the fear factor, the creepiness, like everything that's going on around Bernice in that sequence. Like, that was probably the most spine tingling part of this entire show, at least to me.
Yeah, it was. And again, I was sort of like, I know a bit about Ed Gein's past or whatever, but I had never seen or heard that he was actually involved with either of his victims. This was sort of like, again, I'm just like, I know all this stuff about Ed Gein and I'm watching the show being like, do I? Do I know anything about him? Because now I'm starting to feel like I don't know anything or the show doesn't know anything.
Okay, I'll give my full journey through watching this show. Through the first 4 episodes, I'm engrossed. I'm really hooked. 5 and 6, I'm still really into it. I could have handled having a little bit more of the police investigation and the actual arrest. I mean, it was a good moment when they got to it,
Yeah,
but
it
yeah,
just didn't last long enough. Like when they finally got into his house and they're going through the house of horrors and everything in the barn, and
yeah.
like it just wasn't enough. No trial. It was just all of a sudden he's in a mental health facility. I was just like, I would have liked to have seen some of this.
Yeah, and I was sitting back and thinking, okay, maybe in the real story, because I don't know it that well, maybe it was a pretty quick arrest at that point. Just for me going into this, though, I think I was expecting full Catch Me If You Can to some extent, where we were going to have like a real back and forth game here with trying to catch Ed Gein, and it just felt like that moment never really happened.
Okay, episode 7 should have just been the end. Like
Yes.
episode 8, all of a sudden I felt like we were in American Horror Story, where it was like the Ryan Murphy special, where the whole season is really good, and then that last episode you just need to pretend like it didn't happen, and it ended, right before that. And that's what I really wish had happened, because getting into all of this, I started to feel like you had mentioned this off camera before,
Mhm.
but that like I was watching Mindhunter, where we had the older FBI agent with the younger FBI agent, and they're in here trying to get information to start to profile serial killers by talking to Ed Gein, which again felt like something that just like it never happened. He didn't help catch Ted Bundy. None of this stuff happened. No serial killers were like writing him letters and he was helping the FBI. Like I was just like, I don't know what I'm watching anymore. I thought he was medicated now and was having less hallucinations. Is this a different type of hallucination he's having? Like I didn't really get it.
No, I didn't either because a lot of it, at least the true stuff, could have just been a footnote. It could have been something that was included right before the end credits, talking about his death, talking about the treatments, because the rest of it felt very much like we wanted to get weird and experimental about things. We want to have this Mindhunter crossover that's not really a thing. We want to have not a full musical number, but a partial musical number kind of close to the end that just made no real sense whatsoever.
Yeah, it felt like he just wanted to be able to touch on all these different killers that were all just basically like, yeah, you're the man,
Yeah.
thank you for this and that, and you inspire me. I'm just like, none of this happened. None of this
No,
happened. And I expect to have a little bit of suspension of disbelief when you are doing a television show, but when it is based on actual true material, I don't expect it to just be like wildly made up.
I just wanted the tone, I think, to be fairly similar throughout the entirety of this, including post arrest here. One of my favorite movies of the last 25 years is the movie Capote with Philip Seymour
You
Hoffman.
do
And
love that
I
movie.
I love that movie. I love that performance. I know Ryan Murphy did the Feud season about Capote and the Swans, but I just feel like what that movie did so well is that it was very consistent where after the people who attacked the Clutter family were arrested and you saw Capote and some of the conversations, like it was still really, really dark and it was really, really harrowing. Like there wasn't some sort of presentation to try to show that all that much was different now that these people were behind bars. But now that Ed Gein was put away, it's not like we forgot some of the things that we did, but it just felt like the show was trying really hard to sort of be like, look at some things he might have potentially done that were good for society. He might have helped track and get rid of some other serial killers, but though at the same time, it's like, oh, he may have inspired these other people. And I'm just sitting here being like, make up your mind. What are you trying to say?
Yeah, what are you trying to say? Are you trying to say he inspired other people, which he did not inspire those people? Or are you trying to say that maybe he could have done some good, but he didn't actually do some good? Why can't the story just be the actual end of his life where he does actually get a diagnosis, he does actually get some help for it? And that's okay to be the ending. It doesn't have to be as sensational as the things that he did when he wasn't getting help for it.
There's a reason that Ed Gein is notorious on his own without all of this other Hollywood tie-ins, crossover, FBI, and like all of this
Right.
other stuff. I mean, he is one of the most infamous people who has killed over the course of the past century. I just think having that be the show in itself is what a lot of us signed up for, especially because a lot of you probably who are watching this, you watched the trailer, and the trailer was about 90% everything that was great about this show.
Oh man, that trailer, I was like,
Yes.
this is going to be the absolute best one of them. And then it was like, it was very good. You know, Charlie was amazing. Lori was amazing. The cast was so good. And when we were focused on them, great.
Yeah.
And then I had this finale that felt like all of a sudden I'm watching a Ted Bundy story. And I was
Yes.
just like, why am I watching Ted Bundy's story?
When Ed Gein was hitting, like it was phenomenal.
Yes.
And then when it wasn't hitting, it was a little bit of a hot mess. And I mean, this is sometimes used to praise Ryan Murphy special. It's true. You
It
get a
is.
lot of the good, you get a lot of the bad.
Yep.
But we're just really curious now. What did you guys think about Monster, the Ed Gein story? Do you think it lived up to the first two seasons? Was it too unfocused for your liking? Let us know and hit that subscribe button for more TV coverage,
Yeah.
including it Welcome to Derry. You can support us further as well by joining our Patreon. We have a link in the description for that. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you here next time.